edgy, my hairstylist says.
I like it a lot. It's like, yeah, it is edgy. It's like modern too. Yeah. All right. Well, is this your first town hall event actually? Not to single you out.
It's what?
Is this the first time you've been to one of my town halls?
Yes, I got a text from someone named Chris, and here I am.
That is one of my volunteers. Yeah. We've been doing a lot of text banking lately. But yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. I feel like because of like that winter snowstorm that's about to hit and this being Monument, you know, not as many people as we'd like to come here, but there we go. So, I'm going to give a brief little introduction about myself. My entire platform is focused on three main things. Climate change is huge. The temperature of our planet rose 1.5 degrees Celsius in the last year. 2023 was the hottest year on record, and I would like it to stay that way. We don't need any more records being broken. The economy is also a huge struggle. I've been talking to Steve about this a little bit. The economy is great as a whole, but when you look at the economic stability of people between the ages of 20 and 50, it is horrid. And when it comes to family planning, when it comes to considering education, when it comes to considering buying a house or a new car, all of these things that build our economy long-term in the future, none of that's happening. And so we need to focus on that economy. Gosh, sorry, I just get caught up in that. And the reproductive rights is huge. I know a lot of people have told me, you know, here in Colorado, reproductive rights are safe. But I don't know about you, I don't want to be confined to just one state. I want to be able to freely go about the entire country, and I know a lot of other women feel the same way. We all know a woman, I would hope, and with that you have someone in your life that is impacted by reproductive justice, impacted by reproductive health care. And while we're on the topic of health care, prescription drugs are insanely expensive, and as long as they keep climbing up in cost, health becomes a luxury. Like diabetes shouldn't be a death sentence. You should be able to afford insulin. One of my campaign staff members has a kid that has diabetes, and a thing of insulin is $500 each. That's insane. EpiPens are hundreds of dollars each. And every school should have a handful of these just laying around, just in case, like it can save lives. It shouldn't be a luxury to have health care. So these are the biggest things that I'm platforming on, and with that, I want to welcome questions. So what are your guys' questions?
So what are your ideas to make the economy better for that age range that you mentioned? Because I have two kids in that age range, and I fear for them. I really do. And one lives overseas and will not come back here.
And actually, brain draining is the term when you go overseas and don't come back. That's what's happening, is you get an education, it's more affordable to live overseas, so then you move overseas and then you don't come back. And then we're losing some of our smartest people this way. It's horrible, and we need to keep those smart people here in our country. Student loan debt forgiveness is going to be huge. For myself, personally, the interest on my student loans is $400 a month. That's just the interest. That's not even lowering the cost. Imagine what I could do, at least I can imagine what I could do if I had an extra $400 every month. I could save up, buy a new car, buy a house. You can do a lot of things with an extra $400 a month. And then you have to consider that when it's decades of this has a profound drain on our economy. When all of that money is just going to Discover, Sallie Mae, Chase, a huge host of other lenders. Sallie Mae is definitely the worst. My interest rates with them were 17%. Yeah. Thankfully I paid that one off, but that was the biggest one. So student loan debt forgiveness is going to be huge for the economy, making houses more affordable. People have asked me what can you do on the federal level to do that. And honestly, I do feel like some government money does need to be spent to making sure that houses are more affordable. We need to have policies that say a certain percentage of homes built in urban areas where people work are only given to those with lower income status, or given to those who are buying a home for the first or second time. And I include second time because some people just want to upgrade their home. So if you own multiple homes, you shouldn't be qualifying for more affordable homes. And limiting the amount of property that people can rent is also huge. We need to make sure that if you're renting property, you at least live in that city. I don't like seeing, my money that I pay towards my rent goes to the state of Florida, because that's where my landlord lives. That doesn't make any sense to me. How can I not be able to invest in my own community? And that's a phenomenon that a lot of young people are faced with right now. Right, any other questions?
What's your views on making healthcare affordable?
Expanding universal health care, expanding Obamacare, and the Affordable Care Act. Specifically, and I feel like this is something that will be easily negotiable with Republicans, making it so first responders can be qualified for Medicaid. A firefighter will retire at the age of 40 and doesn't qualify for health insurance until they're 65. That is more than 2 decades. And these are a population of people that need health insurance more than most because of what they put themselves through as firefighters. What? And because of that, we need to I feel like most Republicans even will agree that firefighters are important. And so making sure we can expand the Affordable Care Act to them, making sure we can expand it to veterans. They do have health care, but making sure that they have increased access to community care, and expanding the Affordable Care Act as much as possible to include as many portions of the population. And honestly, and this might sound radical, everyone should just have health care. I'm not opposed to universal health care. But I'll also do what I need to make sure that we can expand it to as many people as possible. I had a thought mid-sentence there, but I forgot about it. Yeah, the Affordable Care Act. So when Joe Biden expanded the Affordable Care Act to include work-study recipients, that included me. And I, in college, was able to get health insurance for the first time. Because eventually, I got into my 20s, didn't have health insurance anymore, needed that expansion of the Affordable Care Act to finally get access to health care. And for me, that meant finding out that I was at risk for anemia. That meant access to affordable birth control. That meant access to affordable mental health care. That meant access to prescription medication for ADHD. All of that had a profound impact on my life, and everyone should have that. I don't think that should be a luxury. Just being able to check to see if you have cancer shouldn't be a luxury. What's up?
Yeah, I know one of the pillars of your campaign is women's reproductive rights, or maybe you could say universal reproductive rights. It affects men as well. And all, like you said, all of us know at least one female. It could be our wife, it could be a sister, it could be a cousin, it could be a child, it could be a grandchild. Now, we know in this state, thank goodness, we have a good record of reproductive rights, but in so many other states, they don't. So when you're elected to Congress, what are some of your ideas to increase access to good reproductive rights for women on a national level?
I like how you phrased it, reproductive rights as well. Absolutely, we need to make sure that access to an abortion, for whatever reason it may be, not up to the government to decide what is a good reason and bad reason to get an abortion. We need to make sure that that is something that can be accessed in every state, simply. We need to make sure that prenatal care is also something that can be accessed and affordable in every state. That can be the vitamins that a woman needs if they get pregnant. That can be the regular checkups that they need. That can be anything. Anything for the whole host of health issues that can come with pregnancy should be easily accessible to any woman, and any man too. While we're on that topic, I also want to expand it to universal child care. Because that does go beyond. You can't, you have to care about the pregnancy and you also have to care about it afterwards. Universal child care, making sure there's more funding in our education system is also critical to all of that.
That was one of President Biden's topics in his speech last night, was get the pre-kindergarten training that so many young little kids need so that they're prepared for the public school system when they hit kindergarten or first grade. So what you just said is very consistent with what he would like to see on a national level as well.
It's also consistent with what my mom believes. So for those of you that don't know, and I imagine no one knows, my mom was actually a preschool teacher, she still is, And she got her degree in early childhood education, and I grew up with her, and she always stressed to me the importance of stress tolerance. And she was huge on making sure that every little kid in her classroom was able to maintain their stress levels. Like, she would do yoga with them, little coloring book activities, and she kept talking about how this was good for the long-term development, so that way they could have a higher stress tolerance later in life. Now, I'm not an early childhood expert, but I would like early childhood experts like my mom to be able to make those kind of decisions for an entire country. And what I mean by that is I feel like every kid should have access to the resources that people like my mom provide for little kids. I always find it ironic that the Republicans consider themselves pro-life, they're anti-choice, when they're not the same people who are advocating for little kids. It's the future of our country, to put it lightly. My goodness. All right, any other questions?
So, I'm just curious about why you are putting yourself through this in such a heavily Republican area. And can you just speak to that?
Yes. El Paso County is considered a heavily Republican area. It has been for a while. However, recently we have seen that it's actually largely unaffiliated. The majority is actually unaffiliated. And those unaffiliated voters don't always vote. A lot of it is just about getting them to vote. And when I've talked to unaffiliated voters and said, what issues do you consider most important? And you can also ask ChatGPT this. You can Google it. And they, their big issues are immigration and climate change. And they won't vote unless there is a candidate that they believe in. Young people are huge on this. They won't vote if they don't have a candidate to vote for. As depressing as that kind of sounds. But the stakes are really high, and it is critical to be able to appeal to the unaffiliated voters. And I think I'm capable of doing that. I'm also a scientist. And I feel like just that fact-based process, the ability to just make simple fact-based decisions, consulting experts, not making partisan considerations, but just using the information as it is and presenting that to voters, that will turn up votes, that will get people interested. Because they don't like to be told how to think, they just want to know what's true. And oftentimes in our political climates, we don't know when politicians are telling the truth. So I want to be a politician that you know is always telling the truth. I will never say anything that I'm not 100% certain is true. That's why I feel like it's going to be different.
I think that's a great question.
Yes.
It's a great question, because you're right, what River and any other candidates are going through, I wouldn't want to put myself through. I really would. It's an invasion of my privacy, I don't have time to spend with myself, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason why I admire all the candidates, and in particular River, is because we have a chance in 2024 to turn El Paso County at least purple, maybe blue, for a couple of reasons. One, the Republicans, and there are good Republicans around, but unfortunately the moderate ones aren't making as much impact as I would like. But the Republicans are in disarray right now, complete disarray. They're trying to out-Trump each other. Lamborn is no longer an incumbent, so all the advantages that attach to incumbency are gone. If there's one chance we Democrats and independents have to maybe turn this county around, it's this year. And that's why I stand in admiration of those people like River who are willing to say, I'm going to put my personal life aside, I don't know how I'm going to juggle all these other priorities and my health, and I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can help turn this county at least purple, if not blue. This is a good year for us to try to make an impact. And I'm hopeful that the National Democratic Party and the State Democratic Party take a second look at Congressional District 5 and conclude that, yeah, you might be right. Maybe this is the year to throw some money in our direction. Because we're up against entrenched Republicans who are very well financed. And it's a tough battle for people like River to try to beat it. But I think there's a chance. And if enough of us, Democrats, progressives, and independents, get out and vote, this could happen. because I like her agenda. And I think she could do great work in Congress if she's elected. So, point very well taken, and I hope I hope we see some results from this.
Thank you for all of that, I appreciate that, thank you,
You know I mean it.
thank you. Yeah, that melted my heart. I will be in this fight until we turn El Paso County blue. I will. All right, so after all that tangent, what are the next questions?
Well, okay, I'll go again.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to.
I think everyone's just
I
shy
don't want to be
today.
that annoying person who like ask all the questions.
No, you're good.
Okay, so climate change, very important. And I think in this part of Colorado, that ties into fire mitigation. So have you thought at all about, what can we do to raise awareness about fires?
Yeah, it's February, we had one here in Monument not too long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
freaky. If you drive through my neighborhood in Monument, you will see trees this close together. The crowns aren't trimmed properly. There's crap all over there's wood piled up next to houses. It's frightening to me. It's really frightening to me, but maybe try to get some fire mitigation grants headed our way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a couple different elements to that. So I'll talk about climate change as a whole, and I'll start with fire mitigation. For the land that we can't maintain, because there's only so many of us, we can only do so much, guys. The indigenous people were here first, and they know how to take care of the land. Return some of it to them, honestly, because they know how to take care of it, and we're not doing a great job. So I'm not opposed to returning some of the land to the indigenous nations. On that note, I also do want to increase funding just as a whole for disaster relief, because we here in Colorado Springs and Monument, I'm from Colorado Springs, so I should say Colorado Springs, we here in El Paso County have a huge issue with forest fires, especially out west. Monument is in the mountains. We're in the forest. Manitou Springs is up against the mountain. Entire towns are at risk here. Increasing funding specifically for our district to have protection from forest fires, so that way our firefighters have everything they need. And we have a scarcity of water as well. We need to address this if we're going to take out all these fires. Now, I have a friend who's a firefighter, his name's Kevin. He told me that most of the fires that they fight out in the forest are actually fought with sand and not with water. And a lot of that is because it's just more abundant. There's two big red flags there. Number one, why is water not abundant? We need it. And second, why don't we just, when it comes to fighting fires, whatever resources are most available, whatever resources are most effective, I mean. The county commissioners here in Colorado Springs also play a huge role in the funding that is allocated for our environment. So, while I have your attention, I also want to express how deeply we need to not just elect me, but vote Democrat down the ballot. We have 2 women running for county commissioner right now who can help in this issue as well. The county commissioner is huge for protecting our environment. I'm not sure which county commission district you live in. Most people don't know. Bill lives in 5. Oh, we're
There's
in 5?
5 up here too.
Ah, okay, so we're in 5 right now. 5 will be up for grabs in 2026.
No, Naomi,
Oh, Naomi's in 3.
or 3, oh, this is 3, right.
Oh, we're in
No,
3.
It's CD5, it's right, never mind.
Oh, okay.
Got the
So we're in
districts
County
right.
Commission District 3. Naomi Lopez is running right now. So when you vote this June in the primaries and again in the November election, make sure you just vote Democrat all the way down the ballot. Make sure you vote for me. Make sure you vote for Naomi Lopez. And that's going to protect the environment, because it is going to be a team when it comes to our environment. And then I'm not sure who lives in County Commission District 4 down south, but Deidre Duncan is also running on an environmental platform and is flipping County Commission District. And then I have a friend him who's running in 2026 for 5, but you mentioned that we're in 3. But I don't think she's announced yet, so I'm not gonna spill the beans there yet. But anyway, all right, any other questions?
You want to take a question from the photographer?
Of course.
I'm a retired military guy, 23 years in the Air Force. I've noticed that the Republicans have this really bad habit of saying often that they want to cut Medicare and they want to cut Social Security. Well, at 65, the military stops paying you TRICARE for life, which is a misnomer, and they say you have to go to Medicare. So at 65, I went over to Medicare, and TRICARE became my secondary. All right, so here's the problem. They want to cut Medicare, they're going to cut Medicare for retirees like me. How are you going to deal with it?
The question is, how are they gonna deal with me?
That's a good one too.
I'm just gonna say this as bluntly as it is, the Republicans don't care about our veterans. They don't care about our senior citizens. I wish that wasn't true, and I hope that I'm actually inaccurate, but that's the reality I feel like we are actually faced with. They don't care. I care. The Democrats care. And in Congress, I will protect our Social Security benefits. Because it is my future and it's your present. We need to make sure this is protected for the entire country. We need to make sure that our senior citizens have the health care they need, have the funding they need. And we need to make sure that they all have health care. Social Security, health care, these need to be protected. Because you served for our country. You shouldn't have to worry about how you're going to pay for medication. You shouldn't have to worry about your health. You shouldn't have to worry about how to have to pay for doctor bills. You've already done so much for us. It doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't be returning the favor to you right now.
Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah.
You forgot to say that the Republicans don't care about kids.
Yeah, they don't care about kids.
It's everybody.
They don't care about veterans, kids, women, the LGBT community, seniors. Did I miss anyone?
I could be sarcastic and say the only thing
Oh, anyone laboring.
the only thing that he did for veterans, as far as I was concerned locally, was give us a cemetery. That's a little late.
So, oh my goodness.
It's interesting, the Republicans seem to care about the child in the womb, but once the child's in this world, they just don't give a darn. They just don't care. They're willing to eliminate the child care and everything else, the other programs, SNAP programs, etc. Once that baby is actually alive and breathing air in this world, Republicans tend to abandon them. Boy, are they concerned about that embryo.
Well, I've attended 5 funerals out of this new VA cemetery, and the people who were vets. Not all of them were retirees and had my benefits. Okay, they struggled, really struggled at the end before they died and were buried out there at VA cemetery. About the only thing they ended up getting for their service was a gravesite. There's something kind of pathetic about it.
Yeah.
It's appreciated. Give me a headstone. I appreciate it.
But that's the bare minimum.
But
That's
that
not
is-
even the bare minimum. That's below the ground.
Sometimes not that far if you're ashes.
Yeah.
So on the topic of like Social Security and many other aspects of the government, like Social Security, the funds are going to run out in less than 20 years. So many of the projects the government wants to do, you know, it's just, oh, we'll just increase costs. We haven't passed the 2024 budget, and the economy's supposed to start to pay the 2025 budget next month. So can you talk a little bit about budgetary stuff and your views on that?
Good
How you
question.
look on that?
Yeah. The budget is huge. Passing a realistic budget is huge, and I feel like we neglect so many areas that are critical and have been neglected for a while. I want to talk about research for a second. Education and research are 2 of the biggest foundations of our nation. This is how we progress. This is why we're #1. This is how we become #1, and this is how we can stay #1. I can't stress enough the importance of funding research, funding the researchers, and funding research for underrepresented communities. There's a lot of diseases, for example, that impact people of color more than white people, like diabetes, for example. Or there's a study I read when I was in grad school that Black women in the United States have the highest risk of Alzheimer's of any demographic in the entire world. And then women, of course, are 4 times more likely to get Alzheimer's than men. Why are we not researching why this is? It's strange to me that we don't know why women are 4 times more likely to get autoimmune diseases. It's strange to me that we don't know the answer as to why. Why haven't we researched that? It's also strange to me that progesterone, a hormone, was discovered in a potato before it was discovered in women. I'm not sure if you guys knew that, but that is a depressing fact. I want to focus the budget on making sure that we have a more equitable society. And a lot of people think of it as a pie. It's not really a pie. Because when I benefit, and I am also running for Congress, when women benefit, you benefit. When people of color benefit, we benefit. When our underrepresented communities are lifted up, our nation is lifted up. I don't know how else to express that. So that is where my budget focuses are going to be. As opposed to, in addition to focusing on this district, I like the idea of the space economy. We are heavily focused on the military budget here. And that's not a bad thing. We need to increase our readiness. We need to increase our research and technology and our cybersecurity. And I am all for increasing that budget. I'm all for having that money here because it provides jobs here in this district. I know I went on a bunch of different tangents there. Did that answer your question at all? Oh, one more thing. The Republicans' inability to pass a budget is reflecting on who they really are and why they're even in power. They're not in power to help us. They're in power to stop us from progressing. Quite literally. Think about what they've accomplished since they've had the majority. What have they accomplished? What have they passed? They got a Speaker of the House.
Twice.
Twice, yes.
Twice.
They did it twice. Shouldn't have taken
After
it
how
that
many
long.
rounds? Rounds of voting.
And how many rounds would it have taken Democrats to do it? It would have been 1. How long do you think it would have taken us to do it? We would have gotten that done in a day. It shouldn't have taken all day even. But what have they accomplished? Not only is the budget just going to be detrimental to us when it doesn't get passed, think about how many jobs are going to be lost. I mean, our economy is kind of becoming paycheck to paycheck in a lot of different sectors. And when you have this issue and then you have a budget that says we don't know when you're going to get your next paycheck, what does that say for a lot of our sectors, for our government employees? What does it say for a lot of people who are reliant on our military budget? For pilots, for example, for TSA agents. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, good. What's up?
Please forgive me if I sound like I'm trying to dominate. I'm not, but I mean, we Americans are facing so many issues nowadays. It's mind-boggling, a little bit scary. Can I ask you a question about foreign policy for which there is no good answer? And I find it curious that we are holding some of our candidates to such a high standard that they supposedly have to solve all the world's problems when the existing Congress and Senate hasn't been able to solve it. All that collective wisdom of 535 total representatives, they can't solve these problems. So I don't expect you to come up with an answer that's going to solve world hunger. But nonetheless, obviously one big issue that's facing Congress today and that you will face when you get in Congress is what to do about the darn Middle East, the Hamas-Israeli conflict primarily. Again, I realize there is no answer that will satisfy everybody, but I'm curious about your thoughts on that conflict and how we can try to resolve it and maybe prevent it from flaring up again down the years in the future.
That's a very good, great question, actually. Well, gosh, complicated is putting it lightly when it comes to the Middle East. Do you guys watch the show of hands who watches Jon Stewart's Daily Show?
do occasionally.
Occasionally, okay. You're absolutely right that a simple solution doesn't exist. I would like to throw in, and of course, like, this needs to be researched, quite frankly, more heavily, because of just merely the gravity of the situation. Any situation needs to be thought out, and it needs to be methodical, it needs to be particulate, and we need to put in a lot of consideration to what we're doing. I kind of like John Oliver's solution of having a NATO-like alliance for the Middle East countries.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
John Stewart proposed a NATO-like alliance
Oh, okay.
for like the Middle Eastern countries.
Hmm.
Now he's a comedian, so I mean, as smart as I believe John Stewart is, I don't want to just be like, yep, that's the idea, and we're going to run with it. There is a lot to think about there, because the Middle Eastern countries don't even necessarily get along with each other. The relationships that they have with each other is very complex. Some people say this is a radical idea, but I do support a ceasefire. I also believe Israel does have a right to protect itself and release the hostages. I don't think continuous fighting is going to get those hostages released. And that is a very touchy topic, to say the least. As far as what you can do in Congress, a lot of it is just, do we fund weapons to go overseas? Do we fund aid to go overseas? There are some situations where this is a very obvious answer. Ukraine, for example. I will always vote to protect Ukraine. I have friends in Ukraine, academic advisors from Ukraine. They're a peaceful country that didn't ask to be in war. I think that's a very straightforward thing to do, is support Ukraine. When it comes to Israel and Palestine, it becomes more complex. And I generally don't like them being compared so easily, because it's two different situations. And I don't like funding for one being contingent on the other. It's not great. Anyway. Yeah.
If there were easy solutions, we would have heard about them anyway.
Yeah.
Would have been solved. It would have been solved on it.
The conflict between Israel and Palestine has gone back so far that I don't know if in my lifetime it will be resolved.
Well, it's
I
a
just-
millennia or two.
Yeah.
Well, you know, people have talked about, as has President Biden, a viable two-state solution, which has been proposed for decades, going back to even before the Oslo Accords of the 90s. And while I happen, me personally, be pro-Israel, I also recognize the rights of the Palestinians to their own homeland. So I think if we can get a new government in Israel and a new government in the Palestinian areas with rational objectives, I think we could come up with a viable two-state solution and diffuse the whole Mideast. That's what I would personally suggest, and President Biden has also promoted that. We just need reasonable men and women on both sides to say, enough is enough after all this horrific killing. Let's sit down and come up with a long-term peace. I think it's possible. We just need rational heads who are willing to disavow violence as the solution, because we all can tell that's not the solution. It's just more humanity dying, more bloodshed. I mean, I assume that you would likely find a reasonable two-state solution as one viable
Yes.
approach.
Well, I mean, I will absolutely say the Jewish people deserve to have a home, and the Palestinian people also deserve to have a home.
Yeah.
And the Palestinian people really don't have a government right now. They really don't. Benjamin Netanyahu is not taking care of the Palestinian people. He's not representing them. Hamas isn't really representing them either. Hamas was in power for the Palestinians longer than the average Palestinian has been alive. Meaning that the Hamas has been in power for generations. That isn't helpful for them. That's not a democracy. They need a functional government. A two-state solution might give them that ability to finally do that, because they didn't really have that ability before. And when it comes to Israel, I do want to clarify a few things. They have done amazing things for women's rights, LGBT They lead the world in cannabis research. They do wonderful biomedical research. They're very tech savvy. They provide a lot of jobs. But their prime minister is a piece of work. I'm gonna not use foul language. He has even spoken out in favor of Trump. Netanyahu has also spoken out against Biden. I don't know why Biden is tolerating him as well as he is. Biden has a lot of patience. I will give him that. Biden has a lot of patience. More than I do. Yes.
I'm gonna shift gears on you
Yeah.
just a little bit. When you get into Congress, and you're gonna get in there, okay? When you get into Congress, what committees do you want to be on?
Well, that's a great question. I know freshman Congress people cannot just pick all of their committees, but I'm gonna pretend I'm a kid in a candy store and pick all the committees. I want to be on the Committee of Natural Resources, protect our environment, because if we don't have an environment, if we don't have a sustainable planet, nothing else matters. Committee of Education and Workforce, and the Committee of Armed Services.
Good choice.
The Committee of Natural Resources and Arms are also where Lamborn is, and as I would be replacing him, I feel like there would be, there's gonna be an opening there. So I'll take it. All right.
Not science and technology?
That's a great thing. So I don't think they're in need of a new Democrat as much as those other committees I listed are. Because right now, Committee of Education and Workforce is predominantly Republican, and so are the other two that I've listed. So part of my decision is based on where do Democrats need to be right now. But honestly, the 2024 election will move a lot of things around, so maybe science and technology will need another Democrat. So yeah. I know they generally, you only get 2 or 3. Usually 2 committee assignments is what you're allotted, and then 3 if you're extra special, for lack of better terms. 4 would be ambitious, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing 4. I feel like I have quite a bit more energy than a lot of our other congressional representatives. No disrespect to them, but. All right, any other questions? What time is it? It's not even 4. Also, this ends at 4, so you guys got 20 more minutes.
So here's another philosophical type question. Just for grins, I often ask people if they're a Republican, why are you a Republican? Or if you're a Democrat, why are you a Democrat? So can you answer that? Why are you a Democrat?
Why am I a Democrat? I love this question. So I grew up in actually, believe it or not, a Catholic household. I grew up in a conservative household. My mom, who had me as a teenager, was crying one day after church. We went to St. Thomas More. This was up in Littleton. And the reason she was crying is because the preacher there was talking about abortion. And this was in the age of the recession. My mom already had 2 kids, and she had to make a difficult decision when she got pregnant a 3rd time. She had raised me, her oldest daughter, to be anti-choice, and then eventually had to make the decision to have a conversation with me and say I was wrong. I grew up watching my mom become a cycle breaker and watching her become a recovering Catholic, for lack of better terms. My parents also swung around in who they voted for. They were Bush, and then they were Obama. They voted for Gardner, and they voted for Bennett. I ended up, as a result, having kind of a search for truth. Which side is correct? And of course, I was raised Catholic, so I had that question with myself. This is what the church is telling me, but this is how I feel. And so I had a bit of an internal struggle as a little girl. And I ultimately decided that I'm just going to search for whatever I feel like is true. And when you search for truth, and when you search for reason, and when you search for compassion, you become a Democrat.
Good answer.
Thank you. That same question was asked at a town hall back in January, And Bill, I think you were there for that. Bill's laughing because he likes that question. All right. That got me wild up a little bit. All right, any other questions, guys? All right, well, then I have a question for you guys. We'll flip it around. Who is registered for the caucus tomorrow? Are you registered?
I'm not. How did I miss this?
You still have a chance till, I think, 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Yes.
No,
Oh.
9:30 tomorrow morning is the official cutoff period,
Till 9:30, okay.
but register tonight.
Okay.
Yes. And if you don't want to do it right this second, so I was just like, do it now.
Too much pressure.
You know, right? You can scan this. You can take home with you. I'll take that.
Okay.
But you scan that QR code. It also registers you to vote, but I'm hoping you're already registered to vote.
Yes.
So I think it's like the bottom. It'll take you to a little page, and it's like the bottom little rectangle that says the El Paso County Democratic Caucus.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll do it.
Yes.
Excellent.
I appreciate it. And let's see, and you get to be committed to candidates if you wish. So if you're committed to me, I would really appreciate it. But you know, I'm just telling you that I'm the best candidate, so.
She is too.
It's Thank you, Drew. All right, so I asked my question for you guys. Who here is trying to run for DNC? Because I know there's a few of you guys in here. I'm not sure if you want to reveal yourselves.
You mean for the state?
For Democratic National Convention.
National. I'm trying.
Tried?
It won't happen, but I'm trying.
Oh, don't say that. Well, for those of you running for DNC, you also have to be at the caucus tomorrow. Attendance is mandatory.
And assembly,
And assembly, yes.
no, and state.
And state. There's a lot of meetings. The El Paso County Assembly, the CD5 one is virtual though. So that one's on April 6th, and then the state is April 13th. Bill, do you know if that's virtual or in person?
I believe it's virtual.
Okay. That's good. They'll probably increase attendance. And then, of course, the Democratic National Convention is not virtual. You do have to go to Chicago for that. For individuals under the age of 35, there's two of you guys in this room. There is a 5K, 10K race, and I'll just go ahead and plug the Young Dems in here. For those of you who don't know about my prior political experience, I serve on the executive committee of the El Paso County Young Dems. Obviously, I had to step down as a candidate. But one of the things that we're doing, or that we were doing, they're continuing to do it, is a 5K, 10K fundraising race in June. And if you participate in that race, you can help send young people to Chicago to be DNC.
Good question.